Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Church Talk podcast with Rob and Jason. Man, we are so glad that you are taking a few minutes today to listen, whatever this day happens to be to you. Obviously, we're recording this prior to you hearing. It'd be cool if we could just, live stream right into your car or your iPhone or whatever it is you listen on. But yeah, we don't do that. We're not quite that intrusive yet. But it is fun because, when you listen to this, the YouTube channel will have launched. So you might actually get to see us, like what we look like. And I'm sorry. I really don't know what else to
Yeah,
say, but
we
I'm
do need to
excited.
apologize excessively, not like that. It just needs to become a new show segment where we just apologize that people can find and see us from this point going
Yeah.
forward.
So, hey, Rob, before we dive into anything overly serious, I want to ask you something or talk to you about something. So, just a couple weeks ago, I decided, you know what? I have been eating basically like crap for years, and I'm going to do something about it. Now, I don't want to do something so drastic that I won't actually do it. You know what I mean? Like let's be smart. So I downloaded an app for my phone where I track what I eat. So I actually log what I'm eating, and not because I'm obsessive compulsive, have to, but I mean, just so here's what I'm learning as I do this. First of all, I'm learning that, man, I want to eat instead of being bored. Like
Hmm.
if I'm idle, I just think, oh, I should grab something. I should get, yeah. I'm not hungry. I just want to be doing something. Right. And I'm learning that about myself. I'm also learning that I don't like my body to feel uncomfortable, as in hungry. And so I eat like prophylactically, like, I better eat something so that I don't get whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's okay to get hungry. It's
Hmm.
okay to, to not have everything right in front of you. And I mean, my doctor didn't tell me to do, well, my doctor tells me to do this every time I see him, but, it's not like I was, morbidly obese or I'm not, it's not that. It's just one of those, you know what? I need to take, so you've gone through different, I don't even like diets because I'm not dieting. I'm just watching what I eat. It's not I'm increasing, like I've been eating fruit. That's just crazy. I didn't used
It
to do
doesn't
that.
sound like you.
I know, but I'm putting aside the sweet snacks and just eating some fruit. And so anyway, I've been doing that, for a week or so as of this recording, and I'm just learning stuff about myself. And I'm not saying everybody else needs to do what I'm doing. I'm just saying there is something about limiting yourself that really forces you to reflect, forces you to think about, wait a minute, maybe everything in my life, I need to at least stop and think through. Have you had that kind of experience when you've done different, I know you've done some exercise regimens with, especially with the health stuff that you've had to deal with your hip and everything. You've had to, be disciplined about some of that. I don't know. I was thinking about that right before we hit record, and I thought, man, we should talk about that for a second.
Yeah, as you say this, there's like a whole, waterfall of thoughts that are cascading into my mind right now. So anytime that I have sort of gotten serious, yeah, there are things that we learn even beyond, trying to be healthier, more mindful, all those things. Like if all you care about's the number on the scale, that's not going to happen quickly. But I am always amazed at how within a week or two, how much better I feel, how much
Yeah.
less bloated I feel,
Yep.
when I'm intentional. When you were sharing that, I thought back to like when I was a kid, a lot of times my mom, I would say I'm hungry and she'd go, "No, you're bored." She would say those
Yeah.
words
Yep.
to me, which were so true in a way
Yeah.
that I didn't understand back then. I remember having a ministry intern one summer, and Bethany and I would go grocery shopping, and we'd, buy hundreds of dollars worth of groceries. And literally, like the intern would, I don't know, every 35 minutes walk to our fridge and just open it up and stand there and like look through. And if we got anything that was nice, like cheeses or meats or whatever, they would just I mean, within a day or so, those would all be gone because they would just like, bore. And it's not like they didn't have things to do. I
Right.
was giving them plenty of stuff to do, but it's like, oh, well, I got a second. I'm a little bit bored. I'm going to just walk to the fridge and eat because that's what, growing teenage boys tend to do, which again is not at all good. Again, I want to stress this: how much better you can feel and how much progress you can make quickly if you're just mindful and intentional. So, because I think a lot of us don't get started because we're like, I have too much work to do. It's going to take me too long. And it's going
It
to
will.
take you a long, 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 long time. It's like Liam, he got braces yesterday. We went to a free consult and walked out with braces, which was kind of a funny thing. The place was so amazing because we were like, we're going to check this out. And we think our insurance might cover a different place that we had a appointment for like in over a month from now. And the place was just so incredible. And like, we were just like, they're going to give us the best care. It's
Yep.
going to cost us thousands of
Yeah.
dollars, but it's like, getting our kid the best care and a great experience and all those things, we just decided it's worth it. And they're like, okay, we can put the braces on right now. And we're like, what? And they're like, anytime we do a consultation, we make sure there's room for both if somebody wants to move forward, which was actually so nice that we didn't have to, go back and forth. So I had a tie with this, Jason, that I got so into thinking about the braces, I
Well, the
totally
braces with the braces, I mean, that's a long-term
well, yeah,
process.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was saying. Like and he has like one tooth in there. We didn't even know about this. That literally is like turned sideways. So instead of facing, so that tooth has to be spun around but they were literally like, okay, this is going to take us 22 months. 22 months from now, his smile's going to be where we want it to be. All these things are going to happen. And I mean, might it take 21 or 23? Yes. But like basically a couple years of slight, and I think that's what getting healthy ultimately looks like. It literally is a process of months and years, not of days and weeks.
Right.
And so that matters. The other thing that I think of a lot is seasons of my life where I have been dialed in. I've been at my quote unquote fighting weight. I felt good. I'm eating well. I'm moving my body and exercising. I am physically healthy, but man, I get really like internally, mentally speaking, judgmental about people who aren't healthy and who, and I'm like, why don't you just do the work? Why don't you, even though I've had these huge seasons of my life where I haven't done the work, where I've struggled with this, like, but when I'm doing it, and, and I think there's some spiritual application there too, right? Because sometimes we in ministry who are, you know, in church every week. I mean, we're honestly, it's our job, so we kind of sort of get paid to do that. But we're in church every week. We're praying the prayers. We're reading the Bible. We're doing all the things, right? And sometimes, if we're being honest, when people are like, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm going on my third vacation this year," and we like there's this sense that we want to kind of roll our eyes, hopefully not on the outside, and and I just wish you loved Jesus more or were more committed. We will think those words. Sometimes we will even say those words. I use the we in the royal sense. I I, I know a lot of people aren't, but there is this sense of like disappointment, and if we were going to put words to it, we'd probably say something like, I just wish you took this more seriously and did better. So I think there's just a sense in which like the things that we are putting energy and effort into doing well, we all just kind of develop a little bit of a low grade, disappointment that others aren't doing that as well, when we really probably should have grace and humility.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I was talking to a pastor yesterday. I actually preached at their church a couple weeks ago, and I took them through a couple of training things and whatever. And he called me, and it's a small church. It's an old church, and they've been through the life cycle of a church probably two or three times. They're that old. We're talking 150 years old.
Mm,
And he was talking to me, and he said, I'm trying to figure out what tools do I really use? When do I know if it's a good tool or a bad tool? When do I know, all this stuff? He said, because like, he said, I did this thing that, Converge, the organization that we're connected with, they put all this effort into doing this thing, and it's with like Wheaton College and university. Like, I mean, it's a big organized national blah, blah, blah. And he said, so I went along with it, and it was about evangelism and so forth. And he said it was a 2-year process, and I took my people through it. Like I preached the sermons they told me to. I did everything. And he said, we got zero response after 2 years of doing this.
Mm,
Nothing. And he
mm,
said, I don't know if is it that the program was bad or good? Did I do it? What, he was really wrestling with why can't we? And I told him, I was like, well, first of all, you can't you can't programatize evangelism, right? I mean, it has to be something that you and your people have a heart for, where you actually care about the people around you and you just want to share Jesus with them. The tools and the systems and all the stuff that they gave you are really just to help facilitate where your heart is, not
mm.
in and of themselves, effective. And I kind of feel like this whole thing about tracking what I'm eating, you're talking about braces, all of this is this idea of, what, that this whole thing is an investment of my time, my energy, but it really reveals my heart in all of this,
Yeah.
right? Like I want my heart to be exactly what God's heart is. And so that means really and truly the most important work I can do is staying connected to the vine, right? Abiding in Christ. Because then when my heart is pointed in the right direction, then I can put up with some of the difficulties, the setbacks, the discomfort that and so when my heart desires to just feel healthier and to, then I can deal with the fact that my stomach actually grumbles now, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't had that in a while, and I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. But I mean, like, it's okay to go through a time when you're a little bit hungry. And in the same breath with Liam, he's going to go through 2 years and it's not going to be comfortable. Like, I mean, it's not going to be constant pain, but I had braces and they
Yeah, I did too.
sucked. Now that was
He
a
woke
hundred
up
years ago.
very uncomfortable
I
today.
I
His
bet.
teeth were sore and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and every time they tighten those wires or whatever, it's like that for a couple days. And, and in ministry, we're going to try some things, do some things that just don't pan out exactly right. Or maybe you look at it and you're like, oh, do you know how much work it's going to be to get everyone on board with this? How about we just keep doing what we're doing? And so I was just thinking, those are things that I think a lot of pastors, especially right now, because we're heading into summer. And for pastors, that either means things slow down or in some regions, things speed up. Like, but it's
Yeah.
not just to
Especially if you're a
maintain.
youth guy, right?
Oh, if you're youth and children, you are probably getting stressed out right about now between camps and events and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't know. I was just thinking the slog of ministry, we need to understand that it's okay if you are not comfortable all the time in ministry. That doesn't mean you're failing and it doesn't mean you're not called to it. It just means sometimes ministry is messy.
Yeah. So interestingly, this month, June, we are doing a series at my church called Drive Through Jesus. And
Nice.
it's the big idea is all about how we live in a world where all of us want everything instantly, right? So like the idea of I want to be close to God now. I want to, I mean, if you live in some parts of the world, you can literally order an Amazon package and have it delivered same day. People are like, well, why would I save up and pay cash for that 6 months from now when I could just put it on my credit card and pay 27% interest? You know, and it's like, did you hear what you just said? Like, the desire to have things right now, it's so great in our world. But, kind of like an idea I've been like playing with is this like, man, somebody could literally spend 24 straight hours praying and fasting, and honestly, at the end of that grand gesture, be virtually no closer to Jesus at all. But man, you like in an earnest way, you crack and read your Bible, every day, you pray every day, even for 15 or 30 minutes for a whole year. And you're gonna move the needle significantly, right? It's Eugene Peterson's that long obedience in the same direction.
Yes.
it's just so important, but we want things now. Like, so for me, when I exercise, like seriously, like I remember times in my life where I've gone out for days with my backpack on my back and hiked, tens of miles over trails. And you know what? Like, when I get thirsty, like, which is real thirst, it's not I'm bored, so I'm gonna go grab something to drink, because I will do that, just like you talked about with food. But it's like, man, water when you're actually thirsty tastes amazing. Some people are like, I don't want to drink water. That's boring, right? Well, that's because you're bored. You're not thirsty. You're bored.
Yeah.
And so I love that. One of the things too that I think we might address, like one of the weeks of the series, that I was talking to my youth guy about, and he might preach the last week of this series. And so he was talking about this, and it's so interesting. He said one of the things he's read about, like all these peptides and GLP-1s that people are taking now for weight loss, is that actually in some people, like, and I think it does it a little bit in everybody, but like will rewire like your cravings and your desires. And that it actually, one of the unintended negative consequences is that there are people who have literally gotten divorced because they didn't just stop craving food, they stopped craving anything. And so, like, I don't really desire intimacy, relationship, connection. It literally rewired that, and it's actually having a negative impact on relationships too. And so here's the thing, like when I do stuff, like I actually want to be thirsty. When I'm hungry and like I see a delicious, well marbled ribeye steak and I start salivating, like seriously, that's some of the best stuff in life, right? And that we
Yeah.
never really experience unless we truly get hungry and do things like the right way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and this kind of dovetails into something we were talking about before we hit record. Not only those programs and practices and all that stuff that just takes a long obedience in the same direction, but dealing with just the grind of everyday life. Like that's the thing. I've been reading a book called "How Did We Get Here," and it's by Todd Wilson, and it's about the church growth movement and everything over the last 70 years or so, and the different things that happen and so forth. But we've come to see and expect that as a pastor, our church should be huge. And it should be, the attendance should be up and to the right all the time. Like that's become the normal expectation, and success, is defined by that. And and in the process, we've created a consumer Christian
Hmm.
because,
Hmm.
and it started in a good way saying, hey, we're in a consumeristic culture. And so we need to meet people where they're at. And yet the problem is the A.W. Tozer quote, what you win them with, you win them to. And so when we're just creating a different kind of consumer, which means they want everything right now. I want to be spiritual right now. But I also realize, you know what? I'm in church 1 hour, maybe 2 hours a week. The other, 100 plus hours, I am not in this space where everything's set up for me to be spiritual. And I'm learning I'm just not that spiritual and it's too much work. I don't want to do it. And so all of a sudden, and then we as pastors, like you kind of alluded to this, we're paid to be good, right? I mean, we have to do this stuff because it's our job.
And everybody
And
else is good for nothing, as you like to say.
bingo, exactly. But man, being good for nothing is not as fun because it's, yeah. And so we've got just this day in and day out grind and messiness in ministry, right? It's not neat and really cool all the time. There are days when, I mean, it's just ministry. It's just normal day. It's not exciting, and I think we've built this anticipation of, man, in ministry it should be exciting, the spirit's moving nonstop, and that's just not the way it is. And we were talking about, relationships being like that as well. Relationships in ministry, relationships in marriage, how, man, you and I joke that people spend way too much time planning the wedding, but they don't plan the marriage,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we're, as pastors, we're generally the ones that are stuck cleaning up that mess, right? Because things happen. And you were sharing kind of a story of some people that you've had to deal with, that are in that kind of thing. But as pastors, and the messiness of just everyone else's mess gets thrown onto us, and we have to figure out how to navigate that and live that without becoming just as messy, or and so forth. So I don't know where, if you want to share just a 30-second highlight of kind of what that story, because I don't want to mess up
Yeah,
any
yeah, yeah.
confidentiality or anything like that. But I just know, like, man, that messiness, it just gets all over you, and it's really hard to keep yourself out of it.
Yeah, and you know, let me maybe this is valuable, maybe it isn't, but I wanna muddy the waters even more here,
Perfect.
before I kinda caricaturize, like, my current, thing because this is something that, like, everyone listening, if you're a pastor in a local church, you are dealing with this, have dealt with this, and will deal with this, all 3, right? Like, in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, like, severe, moderate, or even just sorta slight. But, I've thought about this a lot lately in that, like, there's another podcast that I've been listening a lot to, and actually you and I have talked about it a little bit, but it's, 3 famous people do it, and, they make a gazillion dollars doing it, and they make a gazillion dollars doing all their other stuff too. And yet, like, in listening to them just talk and share about their lives, like, I start thinking, you know what? Like, being a famous person in some ways is a lot like being a pastor, right? Like, there is sometimes some inherent flexibility and downtime, but hopefully you steward and manage that well because there's a lot of uptime and on time where you've got to sort of be, you've got to be on it and ready to go. Like, so if you're an actor and you need to be ready to deliver your lines and to become that character or to make that commercial or whatever it is that you do. The big difference is, those people get paid tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and sometimes millions of dollars to do the things that people in ministry sometimes get paid virtually nothing to do. Even though I would argue that what we contribute and create is actually so much more helpful and
Oh,
valuable
yeah.
to others in the world.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times we also feel bad about anything we do get. Like, now I feel guilty because my church can't really afford me or whatever. And so maybe I should get a different job too in order to have 4 jobs. And, like, I mean, there's just all those things. So I think we just live in such a mixed up and backward world. So, because it makes sense, right? Like, it makes sense if somebody was paying you and me $20 million, and the next movie role that we had, we needed to have 6-pack abs instead of the keganators that we have. We needed to, like, have, like, noticeable bulging biceps, all those things. You know what? For 20 million bucks, we would pay, like, trainers
Yeah.
really, really good money
Yeah.
to, like, whip us into shape, and we would be, like, super committed because you know what? $20 million is super motivating. We wouldn't, be good for nothing at that point. We'd be doing good things because we get paid to do them. So, but one of the interesting things that I think just adds that extra layer for all of us. And like I told you, there's a couple, I always tell every couple whose wedding I officiate that, I could care less if I officiate. I mean, like Eugene Peterson says, he's like, I can do a wedding in 20 minutes with my eyes shut. But a successful marriage takes year after year of alert, wide eyed attention. And so for me, I'm like, listen, like, I can promise you that the words will be great, the ceremony will be beautiful, all that stuff. But what I want to work on as we work toward your wedding day is helping give you guys tools to be successful. And I tell everybody, if I ever see, like, on social media, it's complicated, separated, divorced, and I haven't heard from you, like, there's gonna be, I'm gonna show up on doorsteps. Like, this is how serious this is, because all I really care about is successful, lasting marriages. And so, with that, people actually take me up on what I've sort of said and or threatened. And currently there's a couple whose wedding I officiated, and I actually woke up this morning with 3 missed calls and, like, 4 text messages, but jumped into a meeting, and then we had this recording. And so, after we are done, they are my next sort of reaching back out and seeing what's up type of a thing. And, there's all the jokes out there, right? There's all the jokes out there about, oh, you work 1 day a week and those things with people in ministry. And you know what? There might be 1 or 2 weeks a year that literally feel like that. It's like, nobody really needed me. I could like rest, I could pray, I could prep, I could work ahead. Hopefully we're stewarding those very, like, seldom weeks well, so that we're ready for, all the stuff that will come and is coming. But you know what? Like, the thing that people don't understand is, beyond just all the regular things that everybody expects from us, there are frequent things that blow up, whether that's someone's health has gone sideways, there's been a diagnosis, someone's in the hospital and it's not looking good. They may not pull out of this one. There is a couple that we have journeyed with and know well, who is in desperate need if this marriage is going to survive. There are things that happen with a lot of kind of frequency in the ministry world that might take an extra 8, 10, 12, 15 hours out of
Yeah.
a day and or a week,
Yeah.
on top of all the stuff. I mean, if you, like, never one time have you or I ever showed up at a church on a Sunday and said, "Hey, the sermon's really gonna be terrible today because I prepared it in 10 minutes
Yeah.
because I literally had 20 hours of unexpected emergencies I had to deal with this week." Like, nobody ever says that, but,
Not out loud.
sometimes it's true. But, so, like, everybody expects the sermon to be great. Everybody expects you to show up whenever they have a thing. Everybody expects the words are gonna be great for the child dedications and the baptisms and you know, the weddings and the funerals and all the things, right? Not understanding that there is just need and stuff nonstop all the time. And I, like you said, when you say the slog of ministry, like, I mean, it's like it's a slog, and then someone dumps gasoline on top of you and sets you on fire, and you're still supposed to sort of, like, you know, kind of faithfully take step by step.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard.
Well, yeah, and so over the last year, I have stepped away from pastoring a local church to a regional job that it's just different. It's still ministry, it's still pastoring. I'm pastoring pastors, and I don't have a local congregation, that I bump into at Kroger, and all the stuff that in a local ministry setting, a lot of what you just described, happens. And it's interesting to me because I just have so much appreciation now and love for local pastors because what they do is so uncelebrated, right? It is so I just expected and normalized. Oh no, that's just what you do. It's not hard. No, 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 no. It is an invaluable part of the community that you play, right? And I really want pastors to know that dealing with the messiness of ministry in the moment can feel like you're having, gasoline dumped on you while you're sitting in a dumpster, right? Just waiting for that match to get tossed in. But I mean, what you're doing is really what kingdom work is. Not because your church is growing or not growing, not because you're the biggest church in town or the smallest or any of that stuff. What you're doing in caring for people is the most important thing that we can do as pastors, as leaders. And yeah, dealing with those relationships that go sour or that like that can be difficult to navigate. But man, I've just gained such an appreciation for the local pastor. And I don't mean the leader, the CEO, I mean just the pastor that lives with his or her people and cares about them and walks with them through life. That to me is such a beautiful thing. And we don't celebrate that enough. But I also know it's a difficult thing and a hard thing because of all the relationships and all the things that get messy. And I'm just curious, like for Rob, for you, as you deal with like this one example you just gave, right? What are some things that help you navigate the complexity and the messiness of that and maintain sanity, right? In the rest of your life? Because you basically there's an old I guess it'd be a legend or myth or whatever, but growing up in Kentucky, right? Out in the eastern part of Kentucky, where you get the head of the holler and all that stuff. There's kind of this thing where they had a legend of the sin eater, and the idea
Mm,
was there's this one person who lives on their own out in the middle, in a cabin. Everyone's scared of them, all this stuff. But when there's a major issue in the little town, right? They come into town, they prepare this meal for this person, and they basically cast whatever the negative thing, right, that they're dealing with in this little town. They kind of put it onto this food, and this guy comes in, that crazy wild guy that nobody, knows, wants to be close to. They eat this meal, and then they take it back out into the wilderness, and they're called the sin eater. They absorb, right, all the negative whatever. And I think as pastors we can easily become that, where we absorb all of the negative from the relationships of the people in our church, from, just the stuff they're dealing with, the tragedy, right, that you talked about, the all those things. I'm just curious, what do you do to help mitigate the weight of that?
Mm. Well, I mean, one easy answer is on my day off this week, you and I have sort of talked for a long time about how little golf that we have played together. And I just want our listeners to know this Friday is my day off. This Friday, you and I are playing golf. So that's,
Amen and hallelujah.
there's one thing that helps, right? Like having friends and having hobbies and just having things we can go do that take a little bit of time and allow us to breathe
Yeah.
is something that needs to be a part of your weekly rhythm. You
Yeah.
just got to
Yeah.
find some things that give you an hour here or there,
Mhm.
that you're just disconnected and so but no, Jason, when you were talking just a minute ago and kind of celebrating local church pastors and just the role they play and the relationships that they have, developed and kind of the messiness that they lean into. Here's what I'm guessing. And it's easy for you to see this right on the other side, or, some people are a little older, a little more seasoned, can maybe even see this in the middle of it. But, I suspect some of our listeners heard that and felt guilty, not like encouraged, because they're like, there's that person that called me 3 days ago or 3 weeks ago that I haven't gotten back to. And because I've just been so crushed. There's, this crisis and emergency. I don't know what to do or how to deal with it. And so they're like, yeah, like most of those ministry people are really great people, but I am failing and there's too many things that slip through the cracks. And I've just been terrible at relationships in this season. So I want to say this, and I think that this is really important. It's why ministry longevity matters. It's why like people staying in ministry for not just a few years but decades, because none of this work and none of these relationships are because any of us are like super relationship builder people, and so we just sort of cared perfectly for people over the last 2 years, and we have great relationships and know everything about everyone. That's just not realistic. Like I'm the first person to say things and people and situations fall through the cracks all the time. It's not what I want. We're constantly thinking about and trying to mitigate against that. But you know what? Like I cannot deal with everything. I cannot help everyone, and I couldn't do it even if I wanted to kill myself. But certainly, I could not do it in a way where I also, had a great family that loved and cared about Jesus and was even a little bit healthy physically and all those things, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I do think the relationships we build. I have lots of great relationships in my church, but like I'm literally weeks away from coming in on having been here for 15 years. So, 15 years worth of interactions and time together and doing fun things or in a crisis or whatever, gives you lots and lots and lots of touch points with lots and lots of people. So I think that's really important. I would also say, and these are not going to be like popular, but I think, you know, it's either we live our lives or our lives will live us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's that thing we've discussed before. Have you kind of, have the last 10 years been 10 different years, or have you just lived the same year 10 times and it's just, same
Yeah.
stuff different day type of a thing? So for me, a couple things that are super helpful in a moment where it's like my tendency is to answer or respond, knowing that I can't, knowing I don't have the time, knowing that even to start getting into this right this second, when maybe 6 hours or tomorrow morning, I could do it and I could probably do it well and be helpful. But if I sort of jump in because I'm essential in that like moment, I'm not going to be helpful. I might make things worse. So like really like understanding that just because in this moment someone's like, I have a crisis and I need you. It's like not everybody's emergency is my emergency, in that moment.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of times in ministry, we really are like, it makes us feel good to be needed and necessary. But I'm telling you, like, you need to help. We all need to help people understand that Jesus is the one that's needed and necessary, and that
Yes.
they have access to him on their own. And we are will be present and are present, but that just might not mean like the second you call. It might mean this afternoon or tomorrow or in a couple days. And
Yeah.
then another simple one for me is that, my phone goes on do not disturb mode at 9 at night, and it stays on do not disturb mode until noon the next day, and that allows me to sleep.
Hmm.
It used to be somebody would, like, text or call me at 2 or 3 in the morning because and we have mechanisms in legit crazy emergencies, like, I need to be there in 30 minutes to pray with someone because 'cause they're gonna go see Jesus, like, we have those kinds of things in place too. But, like, if I don't actually get any sleep at night, I'm dead for a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's not helpful. And then in the morning, I try to, like, get things done, that I need focus and concentration for, that if my email and my phone is nonstop going off, I can't
Right.
do. So, like, and I know, like, and you've even joked about it here on the show. We've talked about it recently. You're like, your phone's always on do not disturb mode or whatever, right? But which isn't true, but it has been true more and more as I've gotten older, because, like, just like everybody, right? Like, this thing, can is such an addictive deal that it's just so easy to, like, have that supplant actual people who are with us in real relationships, and I try really hard to mitigate against that.
Yeah. Yeah, just setting up some of those healthy boundaries, so that the intrusions are at least controlled. You're not stopping them from happening, but you're at least allowing them to happen in a way that you can manage them as as they go. I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah, and I'll say one more that it might not be popular either, but when I first got here 15 years ago, there were a lot of people that, and all of our leaders, had my phone number, and I said, "Hey, listen, here's my only ask is, before you just randomly, oh, hey, can I have Rob's number?" Before you just give it out, like, touch base with me, because you know, I'm not a hoarder of my number at all, but everybody having my number, and everybody, um, it did not work well. And I would say it's probably within 2 years. Every meeting I got out of, I'd have, like, you know, 10 voicemails and 15 to 20 text messages. And it got to the point where I literally had to go to, like, Verizon and get a new number, and then I was, like, really, really particular about who I gave it out to, and I would tell people, "Hey, here's the number for the church office. You don't even have to talk to anybody if you don't want to. You can bypass and leave something on my voicemail." And when I actually go into my office and the little lights flashing on my phone, guess what? I I'm there because I'm there to do work and check in and whatever. And so I'll have time to, like, listen to that and call someone back. If you just text me or leave me a voicemail and it's one of 20 plus things that I have to, like, deal with, and I know that historically maybe you're just in a lonely season and you need someone to talk to. Maybe, and so I'm like, this has to be responded to and that has to be responded to, and then I'm in my next meeting. Guess what? Like, the lion's share of those things aren't gonna hear back from me, and so as opposed to disappointing people because 'cause they're like, "Well, I had his cell phone number and I texted or called him and he never got back to me." It's like, well, you know what? No human being is gonna be able to respond to that many things. So, if you actually need a chunk of my time, here's the way to get that. Because if you just, bloop it through to my device, I try to, like, set this thing down as much as possible, and when I'm in my office, you leaving a message there is gonna be a lot more effective at what you're looking for and need from me. So
Rob, I want to talk to you right now because I don't want to wait. I don't want to put anything off. I want immediate gratification. And that means I need Rob time right now. Like, why can't I have it? Like, I mean, but that's I've had that interaction with people, and there is a sense of saying, "Hey, wait, 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 wait. I didn't marry you, so you don't get unfettered access to me. And you know what? I didn't marry you, so I don't get unfettered access to you. Like, you have boundaries that you put into place. You wouldn't want me just showing up at your doorstep on a random, Tuesday evening. So let's return that favor and respect me. And I think it is okay for you to set some of those boundaries as a pastor up front. And maybe you're in a situation where you haven't, and so trying to reestablish those, you feel like you're gonna have to go to Verizon and get a new phone number. But man, go to your board, go to your elders, whatever and say, hey, listen, I need to be healthy. And for me to do that, I need to set some boundaries. Here are some guidelines I'm putting in place. And I want you to be okay with it so that when you get the pushback, somebody comes to you and says, well, Pastor Rob, blah, blah, blah. You say, oh, no, 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 no. We asked him to do that. And we said, we want you healthy for the long haul. And so putting these boundaries in place, is a good thing because, man, ministry is messy. And if you don't have some kind of guardrail, something, you're just going to get covered in that mess all the time. And it is not good. And it will bring you down faster than anything else. And that puts you in a position where you start doing things you wouldn't normally do, and that's when the sins start coming in, the things that discredit you from ministry come in
Yeah,
because you haven't taken the time. And to, circle this back to where we started, taking a few minutes and just paying attention to not only what you eat, like I'm trying to do, but pay attention to where you're spending your energy and your time and even your relational energy, because there are plenty of places in your church and in your ministry that would love to just absorb all of your relational energy, and they will suck you dry if you let them. But pay attention, because that's not healthy. And maybe there's some relationships that you are putting time into that honestly are not helping you move forward in your relationship with Jesus and even in your ministry. I've got a whole thing I want to do sometime on your table of influence and setting that table. I think that'll be a good podcast for sometime soon, but we'll get into that later. But man, it's just messy, and I'm so glad, Rob, that you and I can talk candidly about the crap that happens and yet do it in a way that says, but I did sign up for some of this, right?
yeah.
But in the same breath, that doesn't mean I have to take all of it. And ultimately, Jesus is the one who takes it, right? And reconciles it and restores it. I can't fix it.
And wow, that is a great place to like land this plane. I think that our friends, our listeners in ministry, like that's our default. So we struggle because we're like, I'm just going to trust Jesus, and then we continue to shoulder the whole load, right? Like I know lots of pastors who would say, in my context, like me preaching well, becoming a better preacher, probably is the one thing I can do that's gonna have the biggest impact on my church, whether it's, growing, whether it helps people or not. And yet the reason they never ever get better or put more time into that is because of this kind of load,
Yeah.
right? And so maybe another simple way to think about this is there are things all of us would like to do, but we can't because when we look at our bank account says insufficient funds. We can't afford that right now, right? And in that exact same way, Rob Patterson, Jason Allison, everyone listening, we are finite resources and we cannot be there for all things for everyone. And maybe just one last tip, like Eugene Peterson in his book, The Contemplative Pastor,
Yeah. Great.
uses, yeah, read that book if you haven't read that, must reading for everyone in ministry. But he gives this great thing where he says everybody is a universal respecter of your calendar. So if someone's having an emergency, that again, this isn't my emergency and it's been 3 weeks since I did anything with my kids, and I promised my kids tonight we were going to get to hang out, tonight we were going to play a video game, tonight we were going to the movies, whatever it is that you love to do with your kid, you know and this person's like, I need you. And you say, well, I told my kid I'd hang out with them. And they're like, really? Really? You just doing nothing with your kids more? Which the answer is yes. Yes, it is. It is more important. But if you're like, hey, let me look. Oh, I'm so sorry. I already have an appointment. I have something scheduled. You don't have to tell people it's hanging out with your kid or going on a date night with your wife for the first time in a month or a quarter or whatever, right? So use your calendar, plug in those things, and and again, like you said, Jason, build in those practices, that margin, so that you truly can be healthy and have some more longevity.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, to our listeners, we are cheering for you. We'd love to hear your stories of how you build that margin in. We found that sharing those stories actually, with one another and it is so much better than just trying to hear Rob and Jason come up with the next best story. Because a lot of you are way more creative and are in situations where you've come up with some great ideas, and we want to make sure everyone's connected to that. Take a minute and check out the website as we're doing some updates, churchtalkproject.com. We got lots of stuff on there, some resources, some ministry partners that you can click through and learn about, as well as some blog things that are happening. And then, of course, the YouTube channel. And we're trying to just find different ways to serve these amazing people we call pastors and leaders in our local churches and communities. And so we love you and we're excited to serve you, and can't wait to talk to you again next week. Have an amazing week.
Thanks for joining us today at the Church Talk podcast. We hope the conversation encouraged and challenged you. We would love to hear from you. Email your questions or comments to jason@churchtalkproject.com. The Church Talk podcast with Rob and Jason is brought to you by the Church Talk Project. We work to engage, equip, and encourage pastors and church leaders around the world. Thanks for listening.